There are three things that cannot be hidden for long: the sun, the moon, and the truth. Dominic Sterling spent 3 years lying to the world. He said his wife ran away. He said she was unstable. He played the victim perfectly. Tonight, the lie dies. Because Elena didn't just survive the hell he left her in. She conquered it. And she brought the souvenir. He's about to find out that his daughter doesn't know him as daddy. She knows him as the monster from her mother's nightmares. Get ready, because this grovel isn't going to fix a damn thing. Some mistakes don't end with apologies. They leave scars that never fade. If you love stories about redemption, regret, and the men who have to crawl to earn it, hit that subscribe button so you never miss a chapter. I want to know where our romance family is watching from today. Drop your city or country in the comments below. Let's see how far this story travels. Now, let's see if Dominic can survive the truth. Chapter 1. The night the world ended. The rain came down in sheets that night, transforming the windows of the Sterling estate into rivers of distorted light. Elena stood in the doorway of their bedroom, one hand pressed protectively against the swell of her belly, the other gripping the doorframe so tightly her knuckles had gone white. She wasn't shaking from the cold that seeped through the old stone walls. She was shaking because she could feel it, that primal anticipation, ancestral terror that lived in the base of her spine and whispered that something was terribly, devastatingly wrong. Dominic, please. Her voice cracked on his name, and she hated herself for the weakness in it. Please don't take them away. He didn't even look up from the leather overnight bag he was packing with mechanical efficiency. His movements were sharp, controlled, each fold of his shirt a dismissal of her fear. When he finally spoke, his voice carried that particular brand of exhaustion, reserved for dealing with inconvenient emotions. Elena, we've been over this 3 times already. Clara received a credible death threat, an actual, verifiable threat from someone who knows where she lives, what car she drives, where she gets her morning coffee. He zipped the bag with finality. You had a bad dream about shadows in the woods. It wasn't a dream. The words came out strangled. Someone is watching the house. I've seen movement in the tree line. The motion sensors keep triggering, and you keep dismissing it as deer or wind. But what? He turned to face her then, and the coldness in his eyes made her step back. This was the Dominic the boardrooms knew, the one who dismantled competitors with surgical precision. She had never thought he would turn that blade on her. But your hormones are making you paranoid? But you're jealous that I still have a working relationship with Clara? Say it, Elena. Say what this is really about. The accusation hit like a physical blow. That's not fair. Fair? He laughed, and it was a sound devoid of warmth. You want to talk about fair? Fair is me running a billion-dollar company while trying to manage my pregnant wife's irrational anxiety. Fair is me having to choose between protecting someone with a legitimate threat and indulging someone who thinks every shadow is a boogeyman. She felt tears burning behind her eyes, but refused to let them fall. I'm not being irrational. I'm scared, Dominic. Genuinely scared. And you're my husband. I'm supposed to what? Drop everything because you have a feeling? He picked up his bag and checked his watch in a gesture so casual, it felt like violence. The security team goes with Clara. You'll be fine here for a few days. Maybe the solitude will help you calm down and gain some perspective. The baby kicked hard against her ribs, as if it too sensed the danger. A few days? You're leaving me here alone for days? You have the landline. You have the panic button that goes straight to the police station 20 minutes away. You have every comfort a person could need. He moved past her toward the door, and she caught his arm. The look he gave her hand was withering. "Elena, I don't have time for this melodrama. Clara's life is actually in danger. Stop trying to make everything about you. I'm carrying your child." The words came out as a whisper. "And you're carrying that child in a fortress." He pulled his arm free. "Stop acting like a victim to get my attention. If you want to leave, Elena, then leave. But the guards go with Clara. End of discussion." He walked out, just like that. His footsteps echoed down the marble hallway, each one a nail in a coffin she didn't yet know was being built. She heard the front door open, heard his car start in the circular driveway. Through the window, she watched the red glow of his taillights cut through the rain. What she also saw, what Dominic in his hurry never noticed, was the front gate still standing open. The gate that was supposed to lock automatically. The gate that had been their first line of defense. It swung lazily in the wind, an invitation. And then she saw it. A figure stepping out from the tree line. Not a shadow, not a deer. A person, watching, waiting. Elena opened her mouth to scream. But the thunder swallowed the sound whole. The figure began to move toward the house, and she ran. She ran for the panic button in the bedroom, her swollen belly making her clumsy, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Her fingers had just brushed the red button when she heard the sound of breaking glass downstairs. Not the careful work of a professional, the brutal crash of someone who didn't care about noise because they knew no one was coming. She pressed the button. Once, twice, 3 times. Nothing happened. No alarm, no confirmation light, just the steady sound of footsteps climbing the stairs. Heavy boots, methodical, patient. They had all the time in the world because Dominic had given it to them. Elena grabbed her phone, but there was no signal. Of course there wasn't. They had jammed it. Whoever they were, they had planned this. They had waited for exactly this moment. The moment when she was alone, unguarded, unprotected. The moment when her husband had decided she didn't matter enough to keep safe. The bedroom door burst open. She saw a mask, dark eyes behind it, a syringe glinting in the dim light. She thought of her baby. She thought of Dominic's face when he told her she was being paranoid. She thought about how she had begged him, and he had looked at his watch. When the needle pierced her neck, her last conscious thought was devastatingly simple. He left the gate open. Chapter 2. The Void. Dominic returned to the estate 2 days later. He had spent that time in the city, managing Clara's security detail, handling the threat that had turned out to be nothing more than an angry ex-boyfriend with too much time and too little sense. The whole situation had been resolved with a restraining order and a quiet financial settlement. Simple, clean, exactly the kind of problem that money could solve. He expected Elena to be sulking. He had prepared himself for tears, for accusations, maybe even for silence. That weapon she wielded when she wanted him to grovel. What he didn't expect was the emptiness. The house felt wrong the moment he opened the front door. Too quiet. Not the quiet of someone refusing to speak, but the quiet of absence. He called her name. Once. Twice. The echo mocked him. He found the bedroom first. The bed was made, but in the haphazard way that suggested hurry rather than care. Her closet was partially empty. Not ransacked, but selectively cleared. Practical clothes were gone. Expensive dresses remained. Her jewelry box stood open on the dresser, several pieces missing. He noticed her wedding ring sitting in the center, deliberately placed. A statement. For exactly 3 minutes, Dominic stood in that room and allowed himself to feel something close to panic. Then his mind, trained by years of corporate warfare, began to construct a narrative. She had left. She had actually done it. The argument, the isolation, the hormones, it had all been too much, and she had walked away. The open jewelry box wasn't evidence of a crime. It was evidence of calculation. She had taken what she felt she was owed and disappeared. He should call the police. He knew he should, but something stopped him. Pride, maybe, or the fear that this would become public, that his carefully constructed image would crack. Dominic Sterling, tech mogul and visionary, couldn't even keep his pregnant wife from running away. The tabloids would feast on it. His investors would question his judgment. Clara would be sympathetic. Clara would understand. He called his head of security instead of the police. Marcus arrived within the hour, a former military man who approached problems with cool efficiency. They walked through the house together, looking for signs of forced entry. They found none. The security system showed no breaches. The logs showed Elena had turned off the perimeter alarms herself the morning after Dominic left. She disabled her own security, Marcus said, scrolling through the data on his tablet. The front gate was manually opened from the inside at 0700 hours. No signs of coercion. Dominic felt something loosen in his chest. Not quite relief, but vindication. So she left of her own accord. "Appears that way, sir. Do you want me to file a missing person report?" He should have said yes. Later, when the full horror of his choices became clear, he would replay this moment endlessly. But in that instant, wounded and angry, he made the decision that would define the rest of his life. No. She wanted to leave, so she left. I'm not going to drag her back like some kind of prisoner. He straightened his tie, his armor clicking back into place. But I want to know where she goes. Hire someone to find her, quietly. I want eyes on her until the baby is born. Then we'll discuss custody arrangements. Marcus hesitated. "Sir, your wife is 7 months pregnant and—" "My wife just walked out without a word, taking valuables with her." The words tasted like acid, but Dominic forced them out. "She's made her choice. I'm not the villain here, Marcus. I'm the one who got left behind." The private investigator lasted 3 weeks. His name was Julian Cross, and he had a reputation for finding people who didn't want to be found. He was expensive, methodical, and utterly thorough. For 3 weeks, he chased every lead: credit card records, phone pings, surveillance footage from nearby towns. He found nothing. Elena Sterling had vanished as completely as if she had never existed. When Julian presented his findings, or lack thereof, Dominic was already making peace with a new reality. "Mr. Sterling, with all due respect, this level of disappearance suggests either professional help or," Julian paused, choosing his words carefully, "or something else. The complete absence of a trail isn't natural. I'd recommend continuing the investigation, possibly involving law enforcement." "How much would continuing cost?" Dominic didn't look up from his laptop. "My retainer is $50,000 a month. But Mr. Sterling, this isn't about—" "Stop." Dominic closed his laptop with a soft click. "She doesn't want to be found, Mr. Cross. If she did, she wouldn't have gone to such lengths to disappear. I'm not going to throw money at someone who's made it abundantly clear she wants nothing to do with me. Consider your contract terminated. Send your final invoice." Julian stared at him for a long moment. There was something in the investigator's eyes, disappointment maybe, or disgust. "If you change your mind, I won't." Dominic stood, extending his hand to end the meeting. "Thank you for your time." After Julian left, Dominic sat alone in his office for hours. He told himself he felt relieved. The uncertainty was over. Elena had made her choice. And he could finally move forward without the weight of a failing marriage dragging him down. He had tried to find her. He had done his due diligence. If she wanted to come back, she knew where he was. The baby, though. The baby was a problem that gnawed at him. His child was out there somewhere, being born to a mother who had proven herself unstable enough to abandon her entire life. But even that worry faded over time, smoothed away by work and routine and the gradual rewriting of history that the mind does to protect itself. Chapter 3: The Replacement. Clara moved into the penthouse 6 months after Elena disappeared. It happened gradually, the way poison seeps rather than strikes. First, it was just for safety, a temporary measure until the threat situation was fully resolved. Then it was for convenience. They were working on a major project together, and it made sense to have strategy sessions without the commute. Then one day, Dominic looked up and realized she had never left. "I kept some things in the guest room," she said one evening, her voice carrying that apologetic tone that somehow always ended with her getting what she wanted. "I hope that's okay. I just have so many late nights at the office, and you know how the media can be. If they see me leaving at 3 a.m, the speculation would be terrible for both of us." He should have said no. He should have maintained boundaries. But the penthouse was too large and too empty, and Clara filled it with light and laughter and the kind of easy companionship he had forgotten existed. She didn't make demands. She didn't have paranoid episodes. She didn't make him feel like he was failing at being human. "Of course," he heard himself say, "stay as long as you need. The thing about replacements is they happen in such small increments that you don't notice the original is gone until it's far too late." Clara started using Elena's bathroom because hers was being renovated. She borrowed Elena's robe because she had forgotten hers at her apartment. She wore Elena's favorite perfume because Dominic mentioned once that he liked the scent. Each small intrusion was logical, defensible, innocent. Together, they were an erasure. The nursery was the final threshold. Dominic had locked it after Elena left, unable to face the white crib and the carefully chosen mobile with its dangling stars. For 8 months, that door stayed closed. Then Clara, with her gentle insistence, convinced him that leaving it sealed was unhealthy. "You're holding on to pain," she said, her hand on his arm in a gesture that was sympathetic, but also possessive. "Let me help you transform it. We can make it into something useful. A home gym, maybe? Or a library." The nursery became a yoga studio, light and airy, with floor-to-ceiling mirrors and an expensive sound system that played meditation music. Sometimes, late at night, Dominic would stand in the doorway and try to remember what had been there before. The memory slipped away like water through fingers. At business dinners, Clara wore Elena's diamonds. She claimed she had found them in a drawer in the guest room, that someone on the household staff must have moved them there by mistake. Dominic didn't question it. Why would he? Elena had abandoned them along with everything else. If Clara wanted to wear jewelry that would otherwise sit in a vault, what did it matter? The press loved them. Sterling and Chen. A partnership built to last. The headlines were kind, speculative, intrigued. Photos of them at galas, at tech conferences, at charity events. Clara, radiant and elegant at his side. Dominic, no longer looking like a man recently abandoned, but like a man who had moved on. His friends, the ones who had known Elena, said nothing to his face, but he saw it in their eyes. Judgment, disapproval. A few stopped returning his calls. He told himself they were fair-weather friends anyway, not worth his time. The ones who mattered understood that life moved forward, that he deserved happiness. ... that he had been wronged first. On the 1-year anniversary of Elena's disappearance, Clara suggested they hold a small gathering. Nothing excessive, just an intimate dinner party to celebrate their latest product launch. It seemed appropriate, a marker of moving forward. During dessert, someone asked about Elena. The table went silent. Dominic didn't miss a beat. "My ex-wife made her choices. I wish her well, wherever she is. But I've learned that you can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved. Some people are addicted to chaos." The conversation moved on. Clara squeezed his hand under the table. The moment passed, and with it, the last vestiges of truth. By year 2, Elena had become a story Dominic told about himself, a cautionary tale about loving too hard, trusting too much, being taken advantage of by someone unstable. He polished that story until it shone. He told it at bars to sympathetic listeners. He told it to his therapist, who nodded and prescribed pills for the anxiety that sometimes woke him at 3 in the morning. He told it to himself until he believed every word. By year 3, he had perfected the narrative. Elena Sterling was a ghost, and ghosts couldn't hurt you if you stopped believing in them. What Dominic didn't know, what he couldn't know because he had stopped looking, was that the ghost was about to become very, very real. Chapter 4: The Resurrection. The Sterling Foundation Gala was held in the ballroom of the city's most prestigious hotel, a monument to wealth and influence where crystal chandeliers dripped light onto marble floors. 300 guests in couture and custom tuxedos, an orchestra playing in the corner, champagne flowing like water. This was Dominic's kingdom, and tonight was meant to be his coronation. He stood at the top of the grand staircase, Clara at his side, in a crimson dress that had cost more than most people's cars. His hand rested on the small of her back, proprietary and comfortable. In his jacket pocket was a ring, 3 carats, ethically sourced, designed by a jeweler to the stars. Before dessert was served, he would take the microphone and announce their engagement. The story would have its happy ending. "You look nervous," Clara whispered, leaning close enough that her hair brushed his cheek. "I'm not nervous, I'm prepared." He kissed her temple, a gesture captured by a dozen cameras. "This is our night." The doors at the far end of the ballroom opened. Nobody noticed at first. The orchestra was playing, conversations were flowing, and one late arrival wasn't unusual at an event of this magnitude. But then someone gasped. Then another. A ripple of silence spread through the crowd like a stone dropped into still water. Dominic looked up, and his world stopped. She descended the staircase like a queen returning to reclaim her throne. The woman who had been soft and yielding 3 years ago was gone. In her place was something forged in fire, sharper, harder, devastatingly beautiful. Her dress was black silk that clung to her frame, backless in a way that revealed the landscape of scars running down her spine. Not surgical scars, something worse. Her hair, once long, was now cut into a sleek bob that framed a face that had learned to hide its emotions behind a mask of perfect calm. But it wasn't Elena who made Dominic's heart stop. It was the man beside her, Julian Cross, the investigator Dominic had fired after 3 weeks. Except Julian didn't look like an investigator anymore. He looked like he owned half the room and was considering buying the other half. His suit was custom, his posture that of someone who had killed before and would kill again if necessary. His hand rested possessively on Elena's waist, and she leaned into him, with a familiarity that spoke of years, not months. They moved through the crowd, and people parted for them. Whispers followed in their wake. "Quickly?" She repeated the word like it was foreign. "Yes, Dominic. After you left me completely unprotected so I could be kidnapped, tortured, and held prisoner for 2 years while giving birth alone in a basement, I moved on quickly. How inconsiderate of me not to honor the sanctity of our marriage vows while I was bleeding out on a concrete floor." The words hit like physical blows. Dominic staggered back. "What?" But Elena was already turning away, Julian's arm around her shoulders, guiding her toward the exit. She paused only to look back once, and what she said made every camera in the room flash simultaneously. "Oh, and Dominic, say hello to Clara for me. Tell her I found the emails. All of them. See you in court." They were gone before he could form a response. The crowd erupted into chaos. Questions, speculation, the gleeful schadenfreude of watching the powerful fall. Clara was beside him, pulling at his arm, saying something about leaving, about damage control, about lawyers. But Dominic couldn't move. Kidnapped, tortured, 2 years, alone. The ring in his pocket felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Chapter 5. The Unraveling. Dominic didn't sleep that night. He sat in his home office, staring at his laptop screen, trying to make sense of impossible words. Kidnapped. The police reports he pulled up, through his connections, showed nothing. No missing person report filed under Elena Sterling's name. No investigation. No alerts. He had told them she left willingly. He had convinced them to close the case before it opened. His phone buzzed with messages. Friends asking what happened. Business partners concerned about the optics. Clara, in the penthouse guest room, sending text after text about strategy, about controlling the narrative, about how they could spin this. He ignored them all. At 4 a.m, he did something he hadn't done in 3 years. He pulled up the surveillance footage from the night Elena disappeared. The files had been archived but not deleted. He watched himself tack his bag, watched the argument, watched himself walk out, leaving the gate open. The timestamp on the video mocked him, 7:43 p.m. By 8:15 p.m., the motion sensors near the tree line triggered. By 8:47 p.m., the front door had been breached. By 9:02 p.m., every camera in the house had gone dark. She had pressed the panic button. The logs showed it clearly. But the alarm company had never received the signal. Someone had jammed it. Someone who knew exactly when the guards would be gone. Dominic threw up in the trash can beside his desk. When dawn broke, he was in his car, driving toward the address his assistant had found, the place where Elena was apparently staying. It was a fortress in the hills, the kind of property that didn't appear on real estate listings. Julian's safe house, probably. Guards at the gate stopped him before he got within 100 yards. "I need to see my wife," he said through the car window. The guard didn't even blink. "Miss Sterling isn't taking visitors." "I'm not a visitor. I'm her husband." "Sir, you need to leave or we'll have to call the police." He wanted to ram the gate. He wanted to scale the fence. He wanted to scream until she heard him. Instead, he reversed his car and drove to his lawyer's office. "I want custody," he told Lionel, his attorney of 15 years. "She took my child. I want my child back." Lionel, gray-haired and sharp-eyed, leaned back in his chair. "Dominic, I'm going to be very direct with you. Do you have any idea what you're asking me to do? Based on what happened at the gala, your wife is preparing for war. If what she said is true, if you think she's lying, I think we need to verify every claim before we proceed." Lionel pulled out a legal pad. "Tell me everything, from the beginning." "And Dominic, don't lie to me. I can't defend you if I don't know the truth." So Dominic told him. The argument, the security team, the disappearance, the investigation that lasted 3 weeks, the decision to stop looking, Clara moving in, the renovations, the jewelry. Every damning detail spilled out in his office, while Lionel's expression grew progressively grimmer. When Dominic finished, Lionel was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke. "I'll file the custody motion. But Dominic, I need you to understand something. If Elena's legal team is smart, and if she has Julian Cross backing her, they're smart. They're going to destroy you. Every decision you made, every interview you gave calling her unstable, every photo of you with Clara wearing Elena's jewelry, it's all ammunition. And if she really was kidnapped and can prove it, you didn't just fail to protect her. You actively prevented anyone from looking for her." "I didn't know." "That won't matter." Lionel's voice was gentle but firm. "The question won't be what you knew. It will be what you should have known, what any reasonable person would have done. You fired a private investigator after 3 weeks. You called off the search. You told the world she abandoned you. And all the while, if her story is true, she was... Don't." Dominic's voice cracked. "Please don't finish that sentence." But Lionel's unspoken words hung in the air between them, heavy and inescapable. The custody hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks out. In that time, Dominic tried everything to reach Elena. He sent letters that were returned unopened. He called numbers that went straight to voicemail. He showed up at the fortress gate until the guards threatened restraining orders. He hired new investigators who all reported the same thing. Elena Sterling was untouchable. Her life now guarded by a man who had made a career of making people disappear. Clara grew distant. The engagement had been quietly shelved, though neither of them acknowledged it aloud. She spent more time at her own apartment, her presence in the penthouse diminishing like morning fog. Dominic barely noticed. He was consumed by a single, driving need: to see his child. Because there had to be a child. The math was simple. If Elena had been 7 months pregnant when she disappeared, and she had been gone for 3 years, his daughter would be turning 3 years old soon. The realization broke something in him. 3 years of birthdays he had missed. 3 years of first words and first steps. 3 years of a child growing up without knowing her father existed. The rage he felt, at Elena, at himself, at the universe, was matched only by the grief. On the day of the custody hearing, Dominic wore his best suit-like armor. He sat at the defendant's table, and wasn't it telling that he was the defendant, not the plaintiff, and waited. The courtroom was closed to the public, but he felt the weight of judgment anyway. Lionel shuffled papers beside him. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, reviewed the case files. Then Elena walked in. She wore a simple gray suit, her hair pulled back, minimal makeup. She looked professional, composed, unbreakable. Julian was with her, though not as her lawyer. A woman in her 40s, with steel in her eyes, held that position. They sat at the plaintiff's table, and Elena didn't look at Dominic once. "Ms. Sterling," the judge began, "you filed a motion to deny Mr. Sterling any parental rights or visitation with the minor child. That's an extraordinary request. I'm going to need extraordinary evidence." Elena's lawyer stood. "Your Honor, we have that evidence, but I need to warn everyone in this courtroom that what we're about to present is deeply disturbing. It involves child endangerment, willful negligence, and what my client believes amounts to conspiracy, though we're not pursuing criminal charges at this time." "Proceed," the judge said, though something in her voice suggested she was bracing herself. What happened next would haunt Dominic for the rest of his life. The lawyer played a video. It was dark, shot on what looked like an old camcorder, the kind kidnappers use to make ransom videos. The timestamp in the corner read February 14th, Valentine's Day, 2 years prior. The camera focused on a concrete floor, then panned up to show a woman chained to a wall. Elena, but not the Elena from the gala. This Elena was emaciated, her face bruised, her eyes hollow. She was pregnant, her belly swollen and incompatible with her skeletal frame. She was crying, but silently, as if she had learned that making noise brought punishment. In the background, a radio played, and from that radio came a voice Dominic recognized because he heard it every day when he spoke. My wife left of her own accord. She was struggling with some mental health issues, and I think she felt overwhelmed by the pregnancy. I wish her well wherever she is, but I've had to accept that some people don't want to be helped. It was from an interview he had given 6 months after Elena disappeared. Some podcast had asked about his personal life, and he had given them the story, the carefully crafted narrative about the unstable wife who ran away. He remembered feeling justified when he said it. Vindicated, even. On the video, Elena flinched at the sound of his voice. A man off camera laughed. Hear that, Elena? Even your husband thinks you're crazy. Nobody's looking for you because nobody wants to find you. You're exactly where you belong. The video cut to black. In the courtroom, the silence was absolute. The lawyer spoke. Your Honor, this was one of dozens of recordings the kidnappers played for my client over 2 years. They used Mr. Sterling's own words as psychological torture. When Elena gave birth to her daughter in that basement, she did so believing that her husband had not only failed to look for her, but had actively convinced the world she deserved to be abandoned. Dominic was going to be sick. He gripped the edge of the table, his vision swimming. Lionel had gone pale beside him. The child, Lily Sterling, is now 2 years old, the lawyer continued. She has never met Mr. Sterling. But she knows his voice, because that voice, to her, is the soundtrack of the worst moments of her mother's life. When Lily hears a recording of her father, she has panic attacks. She asks her mother if the bad man is coming back. She associates his voice with darkness, with fear, with enough, the judge said quietly. I've heard enough. Does Mr. Sterling wish to respond? Dominic tried to speak. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. What could he possibly say? That he hadn't known? That he had believed she left willingly? That he was sorry, so desperately sorry that the word sorry had lost all meaning. Lionel stood. Your Honor, my client had no knowledge. Sit down, counselor. The judge's voice was ice. I'm not interested in what your client didn't know. I'm interested in what any reasonable person should have done when their 7 months pregnant wife disappeared without a trace. A reasonable person would have filed a police report. A reasonable person would have continued the investigation beyond 3 weeks. A reasonable person wouldn't have moved their ex-girlfriend into the marital home and started erasing every trace of the missing woman. She turned to Dominic. Mr. Sterling, your request for custody is denied. Your request for visitation is denied. You will have no contact with the minor child unless and until she is old enough to request it herself and has undergone sufficient therapy to ensure such contact won't traumatize her further. This court finds that your negligence directly contributed to your wife's kidnapping and torture. While you may not be criminally liable, you are morally bankrupt. Case closed. The gavel came down. Final, absolute, the end of everything. Dominic sat frozen as Elena and her legal team packed up their materials and left. She still hadn't looked at him, not once. He was nothing to her, less than nothing, a voice on a recording, a monster in a child's nightmare. Julian paused at the door, turned back. He walked to Dominic's table, leaned down until they were eye level, and spoke quietly enough that only Dominic could hear. I found her in a warehouse 3 months after you stopped paying me. She was half dead, clutching a newborn baby, surrounded by her own blood. She begged me not to tell you she was alive. She said she'd rather die than let you pretend to care. Julian's smile was razor sharp. I stayed. I became what you refused to be. And now I get to watch you live with that choice every single day for the rest of your life. He straightened, adjusted his cufflinks, and walked out. Dominic made it to the hallway bathroom before he collapsed. He vomited until there was nothing left, then dry-heaved until his ribs ached. When he finally looked at himself in the mirror, he didn't recognize the man staring back. This wasn't the tech mogul. This wasn't the visionary. This was a hollow shell who had traded his family for convenience and comfort. The press was waiting outside the courthouse. Camera flashes exploded in his face. Questions came rapid fire, overlapping, merciless. Mr. Sterling, is it true your wife was kidnapped? Did you know she was being held captive? Why did you stop the investigation? Is Clara Chen facing any charges? That last question made him stop. What? A reporter pushed forward, phone extended, showing the news article. Clara Chen was arrested this morning on charges of conspiracy to commit kidnapping. Prosecutors say she fabricated the death threats against herself and paid Elena Sterling's kidnappers to remove her as a romantic rival. Did you know about this? The world tilted. Dominic grabbed the courthouse railing to keep from falling. That's not she wouldn't, but even as he said it, pieces clicked into place with horrifying precision. Clara's insistence that the security team leave with her. Her move into the penthouse happening so quickly, so seamlessly. As if she had been prepared. The jewelry she claimed to have found in a drawer. The emails Elena mentioned at the gala. All of them. I need to make a statement, he heard himself saying. His publicist, who had materialized from somewhere, grabbed his arm. Absolutely not. Dominic, don't say anything. I need to make a statement, he repeated, louder this time. The cameras focused on him, hungry. Elena, if you're watching this, But what could he say? I'm sorry, the words were too small, too insufficient for the magnitude of what he had done. I didn't know, but he should have. Any decent human being would have. In the end, he said nothing. He let his publicist pull him to the car. He sat in the back seat as they drove away, watching the courthouse disappear in the side mirror. Inside those walls was the last chance he would ever have to see his daughter, and he had lost it. Chapter 6: The Descent. The arrest of Clara Chen dominated every news cycle for weeks. The evidence was damning. Text messages between Clara and the ringleader of the kidnapping operation, and financial records showing payments totaling $300,000. Emails detailing Elena's schedule and the security vulnerabilities of the estate. But the cruelest twist, the detail that made the public vomit, was the source of the money. Clara hadn't used her own funds. She had embezzled it from the Sterling Family Foundation, the charity Dominic had put her in charge of. Dominic had signed off on the transfers himself, believing they were grants for women's shelters. He had literally funded his own wife's imprisonment with tax-deductible donations. The conspiracy had been meticulous, calculated, and utterly ruthless. Clara had paid to have Elena removed from Dominic's life permanently. The original plan had been to kill her and make it look like she had run away and died by misadventure. But when the kidnappers realized Elena was pregnant, they saw an opportunity for more money. They kept her alive, sending Clara proof of life photos to maintain leverage. Clara had paid, year after year, to keep Elena imprisoned. Not out of mercy, but to maintain control. As long as Elena was alive but missing, Clara could step into her life without the messiness of divorce proceedings or public scrutiny. Dominic learned all of this from news reports, the same as everyone else. Clara's lawyers had instructed her not to contact him. His lawyers had instructed him to cooperate with the prosecution. So he sat in his penthouse, which now felt like a mausoleum, and watched his life disintegrate on television. The board of directors requested his resignation. Politely, of course, regretfully. But the company couldn't weather this storm with him at the helm. Sterling Technologies needed a leader whose personal life wasn't a cautionary tale about moral bankruptcy. He signed the papers without argument. His friends stopped calling. The few who had stuck around after Elena's disappearance vanished completely once the truth came out. He couldn't blame them. Who wanted to be associated with the man who let his pregnant wife get kidnapped because he was too busy protecting his mistress? The penthouse echoed. Clara's belongings were gone, removed by federal agents as evidence. The FBI had raided the place, but they had missed one thing. Taped underneath the drawer of the nightstand on her side of the bed, the side Elena used to sleep on, was a cheap burner phone. Dominic had found it an hour ago. He had powered it on, his fingers trembling. There was only one number saved in the contacts. The label wasn't a name. It was just the cage. The call log showed a call made every month on the 14th, the day Elena was taken. Clara hadn't just paid for it. She had checked in. She had listened to reports of Elena's suffering while lying in Dominic's arms. He had smashed the phone with a hammer until it was dust. But he couldn't smash the memory of Clara smiling at him across the breakfast table, knowing exactly where his wife was rotting. The yoga studio that had been the nursery stood empty, a monument to his failures. He stood in that room late one night, drunk on expensive scotch that tasted like ash, and tried to remember what he had been thinking. How had it made sense to erase his child's room? What kind of man did that? The kind of man he had become, apparently. The kind who valued image over substance, comfort over truth, pride over love. His phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. Against his better judgment, he opened it. It was a photo. Elena, smiling, sunlight streaming through a window behind her. She looked radiant, healthy, alive. On her hip was a little girl with dark curls and Dominic's eyes. Lily, his daughter. She was laughing at something off camera. Her small hand tangled in Elena's hair. They looked happy, complete. Below the photo, a message. She asked me today if she has a daddy like the other kids at preschool. I told her the truth, that her daddy made choices. And those choices meant he couldn't be here. She said that's okay because she has her Papa Julian. I thought you should know what you traded for your comfort. This is the last message you'll ever receive from this number. E. Dominic stared at the photo until his vision blurred. He tried to memorize every detail. The way Lily's nose crinkled when she smiled, the small birthmark on her left cheek, the pink dress with flowers on it. His daughter. His daughter who would grow up knowing about him only as a cautionary tale, a failure, a voice that meant danger. He hurled the phone across the room. It shattered against the wall. glass and circuitry exploding outward. The sound was satisfying for exactly 2 seconds, before the silence rushed back in, heavier than before. Chapter 7. The Reckoning. 6 months after the custody hearing, Dominic sat in his car outside Elena's fortress. He had driven here 17 times in the past month. Each time, he got as far as the gate and then turned around, unable to find the words that would make any difference. Today felt different, though he couldn't articulate why. Maybe it was the rain, a storm that mirrored the one from 3 years ago, when he had walked away and left destruction in his wake. Maybe it was the envelope in his passenger seat containing dissolution papers for Sterling Technologies. The final severing of his old life. Or maybe it was simply that he had run out of ways to lie to himself. He had nothing left to lose because he had already lost everything that mattered. The guard at the gate recognized him this time. Probably had orders about the pathetic ex-husband who kept showing up like a ghost, unable to move on. Dominic rolled down his window, rain immediately soaking his shoulder. "I need to see her." His voice was hoarse from disuse. He had barely spoken to anyone in weeks. "Sir, you know the answer. Miss Sterling isn't." I know she's not taking visitors. I know she doesn't want to see me. I know I have no right to be here." The words tumbled out faster now, desperate. "But I need to try, just one more time. I need to tell her." "Tell her what, Mr. Sterling?" The guard's voice wasn't unkind, just tired. What could you possibly say that would change anything? Dominic didn't have an answer. He sat there in the rain, the engine idling, water dripping down his face through the open window. After a long moment, the guard sighed. "Wait here." He disappeared into the guardhouse. Dominic's heart hammered against his ribs. She wouldn't agree to see him. Of course she wouldn't. This was just prolonging the inevitable rejection. He should drive away now, save himself the humiliation of being explicitly denied. But he couldn't move. Some small, desperate part of him clung to the possibility that maybe, somehow, she would give him 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes to try to articulate the guilt that was eating him alive from the inside out. The guard returned, and his expression was unreadable. "Mr. Cross says you can come to the house, but if you upset Miss Sterling or the child, you'll be removed immediately." "And Mr. Sterling?" "He wants me to tell you that he'll be present for the entire conversation. Non-negotiable." "Yes, anything. Thank you." Dominic's hands shook as he shifted the car into drive. The drive up to the house felt eternal. The property was extensive, rolling grounds, security checkpoints every 100 yards, cameras tracking his movement. This was a fortress designed by someone who understood real threats, someone who had learned the hard way that safety required vigilance, someone who had failed to protect what mattered most and refused to make that mistake twice. Julian was waiting on the front steps when Dominic parked. He stood with his arms crossed, backlit by the warm light spilling from the open door behind him. He looked every inch the guardian, the protector, the man who had become what Dominic should have been. "Mr. Sterling." Julian's greeting was frost. "Let's establish ground rules before you step foot inside. You have 10 minutes. You will speak quietly and calmly. If Lily appears, you will not approach her, speak to her, or even look at her directly. Elena has agreed to this meeting against my recommendation, which means if you waste her time or cause her pain, I will personally ensure you regret it. Are we clear?" "Crystal." Dominic climbed out of the car. The rain had soaked through his jacket, but he barely felt it. "Thank you for letting me. I'm not letting you do anything. Elena is, and only because she thinks it might give you the closure you clearly haven't found on your own. Julian stepped aside, gesturing toward the door. After you. The interior of the house was warm, lived in, filled with signs of actual life. Children's toys in a basket by the stairs, framed photos on the walls, Elena laughing, Lily covered in paint, Julian reading a bedtime story. The domesticity of it hit Dominic like a physical blow. This was the life he could have had, should have had, would have had if he hadn't been so monumentally, catastrophically foolish. Elena sat in the living room, curled into the corner of a couch with a mug of tea. She wore jeans and an oversized sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked softer than she had at the gala or the courthouse, more like the woman he remembered. But when she looked at him, her eyes held no warmth. They were the eyes of someone looking at a problem to be solved and then forgotten. Dominic, she didn't stand, didn't offer him a seat. You have 10 minutes. Julian set a timer. I'd suggest you use them wisely. He stood in the doorway, suddenly aware of how he must look. Soaked, haggard, desperate. I don't know where to start. The beginning usually works. Her voice was flat, emotionless. Though in our case, I suppose that would take more than 10 minutes. I'm sorry. The words burst out of him. Elena, I'm so deeply, profoundly sorry for everything I did. For leaving you unprotected. For not looking for you. For giving up after 3 weeks. For moving Clara into our home. For telling the world you were unstable. For... Stop. She held up a hand. If you came here to apologize, you've wasted your time and mine. I don't want your apology, Dominic. An apology requires me to care whether you feel guilty, and I don't. What happened to me happened because of you, but it's not about you anymore. It hasn't been for a long time. The dismissal was worse than anger would have been. Then what do you want? Why did you agree to see me? Because I wanted to look at you one more time and confirm what I already knew. She took a sip of her tea, studied him over the rim. You're still thinking about this in terms of what you've lost. Your wife, your daughter, your reputation, your company. Everything that was taken from you because of your own choices. But you know what I don't see when I look at you? He waited, afraid of the answer. Understanding. She set down her mug with careful precision. You're drowning in guilt, yes. Guilt is easy. Guilt is about you and your feelings and your pain. What you haven't done, what I don't think you're capable of doing, is truly understanding what you did to me, to us. I do understand. You were kidnapped because I know. Her voice cut like a blade. You don't. Because if you did, you wouldn't be standing here asking for forgiveness or closure or whatever it is you came here hoping to find. You'd be at home, living with the weight of it, accepting that some things can't be fixed or redeemed or made right. You'd understand that you don't get to feel better about this. Ever. Julian moved from his position by the door to stand behind the couch, his hand resting on Elena's shoulder. A unit, a family. Dominic was the outsider looking in. I love my daughter, Dominic said, desperate now as the minutes ticked away. Please, Elena, I know I don't deserve anything from you, but Lily is innocent in this. She deserves to know her father. Why? Elena's question was genuine, curious. Give me one good reason why my daughter deserves to have her life disrupted by a father who proved himself incapable of protecting her mother. One reason that's about her and not about you. Because, Dominic faltered, every reason that came to mind was selfish. Because I want to know her. Because I need to be part of her life. Because I can't stand the thought of her growing up thinking I didn't care. Because every child deserves 2 parents. She has 2 parents. Elena's gaze didn't waver. Julian has been her father since the day she was born. He was there for her first word, her first step, her first everything. He reads to her every night. He knows she likes her sandwiches cut diagonal, not straight across. He checks for monsters under her bed, even though he knows there aren't any, because she feels safer when he does. That's a father, Dominic. Not biology, presence. From somewhere upstairs came the sound of small footsteps, then a child's voice calling out, "Mama, I had a bad dream." Elena's entire demeanor shifted. The hardness melted into immediate, fierce tenderness. "I'm here, baby. Come down." "Elena, wait," Dominic started, but Julian's hand landed on his shoulder. Heavy, a warning. "You don't move. You don't speak. If she sees you, you pretend to be invisible," Julian said quietly. "This isn't about you." Lily appeared at the top of the stairs, rubbing her eyes. She was wearing pajamas covered in stars, her dark curls wild from sleep. She was breathtakingly beautiful, and looking at her hurt in a way Dominic hadn't known was possible. This was his daughter, his child, and she was a complete stranger. She started down the stairs, then froze when she saw Dominic. Her little face crumpled in confusion, then fear. She knew, somehow, on some instinctive level, she knew who he was. "Mama?" Her voice was small, trembling. "Is that the man from the recording? Is that the bad voice man?" Elena rose smoothly, crossing to the stairs and scooping Lily into her arms. "No, sweetheart, just a visitor. He's leaving now. You're safe. Papa Julian and I would never let anyone hurt you. Remember? Promise?" Lily buried her face in Elena's neck. "Promise." Elena turned to look at Dominic, and there was no mercy in her eyes. "Your time is up. Please, But what could he say? That seeing his daughter reduced to tears by his mere presence was killing him? That he wanted a chance to be better? He had already proven what chances meant in his hands. Julian moved past him to open the front door. Rain poured in, cold and cleansing. "You need to leave, now." Dominic walked to the threshold and turned back one last time. Elena was swaying gently, whispering something soothing to Lily, who had stopped crying, but still clung to her mother. Julian joined them, his arms wrapping around both of them. A portrait of everything Dominic had destroyed and could never reclaim. "For what it's worth," Dominic said, his voice breaking, "I would give anything to go back and make different choices, every single day. It's worth nothing." Elena's words were quiet but final. "Because you can't go back. None of us can. The only difference is that I've built something beautiful from the ashes, and you're still standing in the ruins, trying to figure out what went wrong. Goodbye, Dominic. Don't come back." The door closed, the lock clicked, and Dominic stood on the porch in the rain, alone. Epilogue: The Empty Kingdom. 5 years later, Dominic Sterling sat in the modest apartment he had moved into after selling the penthouse. The luxury of his old life felt obscene now, impossible to maintain when every expensive thing reminded him of how much he had valued the wrong things. He lived simply now, a consultant for tech startups, making enough to be comfortable, but never wealthy again. He had donated most of his money to organizations that helped missing persons, trafficking victims, abused women. It didn't absolve him. Nothing could. But it was something. His therapist said he was making progress. He wasn't sure he agreed. Progress implied movement toward something better. But his life had plateaued into a gray existence of work, therapy, and memories that never quite faded. Sometimes late at night, he pulled up Lily's social media pages. Elena kept them private, but mutual acquaintances would occasionally share photos. Lily was 8 now, smart and vibrant, with Elena's determination and a smile that lit up rooms. In every photo, Julian was there, Lily's papa, the only father she had ever truly known. They had officially adopted each other 2 years ago. Julian becoming her legal father, Lily taking his last name. Sterling erased, replaced by Cross. Dominic had sent a card on her birthday every year. They were always returned unopened. His phone rang, an unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Mr. Sterling?" An unfamiliar woman's voice. "This is Dr. Sarah Chen from Riverside Elementary School. I'm calling because Lily Cross is in my office, and she's asked me to contact you." His heart stopped. "Is she okay? Is Elena?" "Everyone's fine, but Lily is doing a project on family history, and she had some questions that her mother's. Elena recently married Julian, you may not have known. Felt she was old enough to ask you herself. With supervision, of course. Elena approved this call, but she wants to be clear that if you cause Lily any distress, it will be the last contact you have. Yes, of course, whatever she needs." Dominic's hands shook so badly he almost dropped the phone. "I'm going to put her on now. Remember, Mr. Sterling, she's 8 years old. Be kind." A pause, shuffling, then a small, clear voice. "Hello, this is Lily Cross." Dominic closed his eyes. His daughter's voice, the first words she had ever spoken directly to him. "Hello, Lily. This is, I know who you are." She didn't sound afraid, just matter of fact. "You're my biological father. Mom explained it to me. She said you made bad choices a long time ago, but that you're trying to be better now. Is that true?" "Yes." The word came out choked. "I made terrible choices, and I will regret them every day for the rest of my life. Your mother is the bravest person I've ever known, and his voice broke. "You're the best thing I ever had a part in creating, even if I don't deserve to know you." Silence. Then, "My project is about where I come from. I have to make a family tree. Mom and Papa told me all about their families, but they said I should decide if I want to include you or not." "Do you have family I should know about? Grandparents or anything?" He had expected accusations, questions about why he had failed. Instead, she was asking about his parents, his history, the roots of her tree. It was so practical, so straightforward, so utterly heartbreaking in its innocence. "Yes, your grandmother, my mother, is still alive. She lives in Oregon. She's a painter. You have her hands." He had noticed that in photos. The long fingers, the artistic grace. "And my father, your grandfather, he died before you were born, but he was a teacher. He would have loved you so much. Can you email me their information for my project?" All business, this little girl who was his but wasn't. "Of course. Lily, can I ask you something? I guess. Are you happy? Is your mom happy?" Another pause. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. "We're really happy. Papa takes me to the park every Saturday, and Mom teaches me to cook. And we have movie nights every Friday. I have friends and a dog named Chester, and I'm learning piano. Sometimes Mom gets sad about what happened before I was born, but then Papa makes her laugh, and she's okay again. That's good. That's all I wanted to know, that you're loved and safe and happy." "I am. But Mr. Sterling, Mom said I could ask you one question, and you have to tell me the truth. Anything. If you could go back and do things different, would you?" The question a therapist might ask. The question he asked himself every single day. "Yes, I would give anything, everything, to go back and make different choices. To be the person your mom deserved, the father you deserved. But I can't go back, Lily. So all I can do is try to be better now, even though better doesn't fix what I broke." Okay. She processed this in the way children do, straightforward and unfiltered. I think maybe when I'm older, like 16 or something, I might want to meet you, so I can see where I come from for real, not just for a project. But right now, I'm good with how things are. Is that okay?" Tears streamed down Dominic's face. "That's more than okay. Lily, that's more than I could ever hope for. Thank you." "You're welcome. I have to go now. Dr. Chen says my mom is here to pick me up. Bye, Mr. Sterling." "Goodbye, Lily. And Lily, I love you. I know I don't have the right to say that, but I do. I always will." "Okay, bye." The line went dead. Dominic sat in his apartment, holding his phone, crying for the daughter who had given him more grace than he deserved and less than he wanted. She was happy. Elena was happy. They had built a beautiful life from the ruins he had created, and he wasn't part of it. Maybe someday, when Lily was 16, she would want to know him. Maybe not. Either way, it was her choice. All he could do was live with his choices and hope that somehow 8 years and counting of trying to be better would mean something when she was ready. If she was ever ready. His phone buzzed. A text from the unknown number Dr. Chen had called from. "She's a good kid. You would be proud. But she's good because Elena and Julian raised her to be. Remember that. E." One more message, this one with an attachment. A photo of Lily's family tree project. There, in the corner, was his name, Dominic Sterling, connected to Lily with a thin, tentative line. Not in the center, not in the place of honor, but present, acknowledged, a part of the story, even if not the main character. Below his name, in Lily's careful handwriting, "My biological father. Mom says he made mistakes, but people can change. I don't know him yet, but maybe someday. Maybe someday." Dominic printed the photo and framed it. He placed it on his desk where he would see it every morning. A reminder of what he had lost, yes, but also of the smallest sliver of grace he had been granted. The possibility, not the promise, but the possibility that 8-year-old Lily Cross might, in another 8 years, decide to give him a chance. He had spent 3 years lying to the world and himself. He had spent 5 years trying to atone. He would spend however many years remained trying to become someone worthy of that maybe someday. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't redemption. It wasn't a happy ending. But it was truth. And truth was the only thing he had left to offer. He sat alone in his apartment, the richest man in the world, with nothing but hope. And for the first time in 8 years, that felt almost like enough. End.